Oh no, Soraka is back in solo lanes? Not like this, please. This patch is wild, summoners, and I'm glad to welcome you back to our channel for another Korean builds video. My name is Dan, and I'll be running you guys through some new builds that have emerged as of the recent patch 10.16. We got some builds for every single role, so make sure to stay tuned. These are some of the newest builds, and you don't want to miss out. Ride the hype before it becomes mainstream. Really quick though, guys, have you guys checked out ProGuides.com? That's where you need to go if you're serious about improving this season. We've got a ton of stuff there to help you out, like live classes hosted by the very best. So make sure you stop by and check it out. Also, we gotta go through our question of the day. Which champions do you want to see more of and less of on Summoner's Rift? Easy one for me, to be honest. Not that I don't think Yasuo isn't cool, but I definitely think he's way too overhyped. I don't want him to disappear, but I do want to see him less in my games. It's always subjective, but I think Echo is just as cool, but not as popular as Yasuo. He's fun to watch and has that same swag, but I don't think players hype him up nearly enough. Let me know your answers in the comments below. First up, let's talk about a new build we're seeing used on Sylas. This is actually a build we've seen the Shy using, although it's uncertain whether or not he's the one that came up with this build. What's special about it is the fact that it uses fleet footwork as well as Hextech GLP. As a result, Sylas has some extra sustain, mobility, and a nice old slow from GLP's active. Ultimately, you end up with some more utility and tools to outplay opponents with. For the runes, you'll run Fleet Footwork, Triumph, Alacrity, Last Stand, Magical Footwear, and Biscuit Delivery. Also, the items are a little bit different than normal, as you're going to build a Hextech GLP, Sorcerer's Shoes, Liandry's Torment, Void Staff, Zanya's Hourglass, and Rylai's Crystal Scepter. This build makes Sylas a little more durable, but much more reliant on longer extended fights than other builds. You're much more focused on making sure you can maximize the value of Liandry's Torment and continue kiting enemies with slows. Alternatively, you can replace Rylai's with a Morellonomicon if you'd rather have healing reduction. This build is a nice breath of fresh air, as you'll be able to move around more freely and also have a little bit more sustain to work with. Next in the top lane is a throwback to LULU top. However, this isn't the old AP LULU top we saw in the distant past. Players have begun playing full support LULU in the top lane. While they don't start with the spell thieves like support solo laners did earlier in the season, the rest of their itemization heavily focuses on utility. With this build, you get a very farmed support that'll make it even harder for enemies to take down their targets. Even without much ability power, LULU acts as a self-sufficient solo laner who either wins lane or uses her abilities to secure farm and scale up to become a utility-based monster. For runes, run Summon Airy, Mana Flow Ban, Transcendence, Scorch, Biscuit Delivery, and Cosmic Insight. You can instead take Gathering Storm if you prefer to play a farm lane, but Scorch is such a powerful pickup on LULU because of her incredible laning. For items, build Boots of Swiftness, Athene's Unholy Grail, Redemption, Medjai's Soul Stealer, Ardent Censor, and Shirelia's Reverie. Going for an early Boots of Swiftness will provide you with the necessary mobility to maintain a safe distance between you and your opponent. Especially in harder matchups, building them early will help you safely run away after farming minions. Our final top lane build this time around is Conqueror Lilia. In the top lane, it seems like Conqueror is the go-to keystone for her, and we're here to give you guys a quick rundown of what setup seems most appropriate for her. For runes, run Conqueror, Triumph, Alacrity, Last Stand, Taste of Blood, and Ravenous Hunter. In terms of her playstyle, Lilia likes to hop in and out of fights. Although mobile, she does need to get pretty deep into enemy lines at times, so she needs some durability, and these runes help with that. Conqueror, Taste of Blood, and Ravenous Hunter especially help her out a ton. Lilia deals a lot of damage with her spells, so taking Ravenous Hunter will increase the amount of healing you receive, as you'll also rely on Conqueror. For items, build Boots of Swiftness, Liandry's Torment, Zanya's Hourglass, Rylai's Crystal Scepter, Void Staff, and Deadman's Plate. This build focuses primarily on a combination of tankiness, mobility, and extended fight damage with Liandry's Torment. Alright, that covers our top lane builds. Let's take a look at the screen for a small review of them. Save them, write them down, do whatever you need to, because we're gonna run through some jungle builds next. For all of you Lilia enthusiasts out there, we got a new build that might be something you want to give a try. While we are all scrambling to figure out the most optimal Lilia build, a lot of players have settled on either Conqueror or Phase Rush. However, another choice you'll want to at least try once is Dark Harvest. This build is starting to gain a little bit of popularity for a few reasons. While it doesn't provide the same extended fight damage or mobility that the latter two keystones does, it does provide Lilia with some burst damage, and she's able to take Nimbus Cloak and Water Walking for some extra movement speed. One of the best parts about running Dark Harvest on Lilia is the fact that her passive can activate it. While you're usually not last hitting enemies with your passive, the fact that you're able to easily activate Dark Harvest is definitely convenient and adds to the luxury of this keystone. For runes, run Dark Harvest, Cheap Shot, Eyeball Collection, Ravenous Hunter, Nimbus Cloak, and Water Walking. Nimbus Cloak, in spite of its nerfs, remains an okay rune to run because of the fact that junglers are using Summoner's Smite quite regularly during their ganks. Any extra mobility is great to have on Lilia. For items, build Runic Echoes, Sorcerer's Shoes, Ionian Boots Lucidity, Leandri's Torment, Zanya's Hourglass, and Deadman's Plate. AP is essential on Lilia, and rounding out the build with the Deadman's Plate provides Lilia with some well-needed tank stats as well as some extra movement speed to dip in and out of fights. Lilia is still a pretty new champion, so I'm going to let you guys know that you can check out ProGuides.com and hit up a coach who can help you learn her. Don't feel intimidated, they're really friendly and would love to teach you guys. A build we've actually seen used by KT Rolster's Malrang is Graves, but with Summoner Ignite instead of Flash. Pretty ballsy, but in certain matchups, the extra damage and free healing reduction can really come in clutch. When combined with Skirmisher Saber, you gain an immense amount of bonus true damage that'll allow you to cut through any foe, whether they're squishy assassins or durable tanks. This is a build he started using rather recently, and it feels like it's superior in specific matchups, so this is definitely something you guys should experiment with. Against champions with Sustain, for example, having Summoner Ignite can easily turn the tides of otherwise close fights. For runes, you're going to run Phase Rush, Nimbus Cloak, Absolute Focus, Water Walking, Legend Alacrity, and Last Stand. For items, you'll build the Warrior Enchantment, Black Cleaver, Berserker's Greaves, Mortal Reminder, Umbral Glaive, and Guardian Angel. That concludes the jungle build, so like always, we'll put those builds up for you guys to take a final look at. Alright, next up is the mid lane. Kicking off the mid lane is a build that we've seen used in other roles, but are finally seeing it mid. Phase Rush Set has made his way to the mid lane after some appearances in the jungle and support roles. As mid lane champions tend to be a bit squishier, running Phase Rush allows Set to exert a ton of pressure. The biggest issue Set faces is that he can face opponents who outrange him, ones that can kite him, or champions that can do both. By running Phase Rush, when Set manages to get an inch, he takes a whole mile because he can chase his opponents down with the immense speed boost from Phase Rush. He has a ton of damage already built into his kit, so Phase Rush Set acts as a juggernaut that can act as a soft counter to assassins while simultaneously pressuring squishies. For runes, you'll want to run Phase Rush, Nimbus Cloak, Celerity, Water Walking, Bone Plating, and Unflinching. In terms of items, you're going to opt into a tankier Set build. Build a Sunfire Cape, Deadman's Plate, Ninja Tabby, Thornmail, Warmog's Armor, and an Adaptive Helm. With this setup, Set is an excellent answer to many AD mid laners and should happily take them on in 1v1 fights. Similarly to the LULU build we mentioned earlier, Soraka is making her return to solo lanes as well, this time with Unsealed Spellbook. While Soraka isn't as strong as before in 1v1 matchups, she still scales incredibly well and is an excellent support to have on your team, regardless of which lane she's played in. Putting her in the mid lane also opens up the support role to be played by a champion more suited to carry, such as Zyra or Senna. By running Unsealed Spellbook, you'll gain access to an arsenal of defensive summoner spells like Barrier, Heal, and Exhaust that'll make it easier to farm safely and possibly even zone your opponents out through combat advantages. Fighting against Soraka often feels like a battle that's determined by whether or not you can burst her down. Extra summoner spells makes taking her out a pretty daunting challenge. For runes, take Unsealed Spellbook, Cosmic Insight, Perfect Timing, Biscuit Delivery, Time Warp Tonic, Nimbus Cloak, and Scorch. If you prefer to scale a bit harder at the cost of some lane pressure, swap out Scorch for Gathering Storm. Nimbus Cloak also synergizes really well with Unsealed Spellbook as it'll provide even more safety through some bonus movement speed. For items, build Ionian Boots of Lucidity, Redemption, Athene's Unholy Grail, Shralia's Reverie, Medjai's Soul Stealer, and an Ardent Censer. That's it for the mid lane build, so we're going to put them up for you guys one more time. Take a final look at them on your screen as we head into the bottom lane next. The first build we'll go over for bot laners is a new SENNA build. Bot lane carry Senna isn't anything new. She flexes into both the ADC and support roles. However, items have been slowly shifting around, and it looks like we might actually have a new set of items that Senna players are using. Rather than the full lethality builds or frozen mallet and black cleaver builds that we saw in the past, we're actually starting to see a lot more standard itemization nowadays. A lot of you guys might actually have caught on to this faster and be aware of this build, but it's currently gaining a ton of traction in Korea. For runes, you run Grasp of the Undying, Demolish, Second Wind, Revitalize, Magical Footwear, and Biscuit Delivery. For items, you'll build a Manamune, Duskblade of Drakthar, Rapid Fire Cannon, Infinity Edge, and Mortal Reminder. The combination of Rapid Fire Cannon and Infinity Edge provides a similar level of damage output as lethality-centered builds, but the biggest strength of this build is the Rapid Fire Cannon. Senna's range is extremely long, and Rapid Fire Cannon makes it even longer. Playing around the item allows Senna to snipe distant foes with a basic attack and chunk them pretty heavily if the attack ends up critting. This build also still uses Duskblade of Drakthar, which adds a little bit of lethality and also adds some burst damage with its passive. Next on the list is Caitlyn, with a slight variation on her build. Marksman builds are pretty one-dimensional for the most part. You got boots, an Infinity Edge, one completed Zeal item, a source of lifesteal, and some armor penetration. However, one build we're starting to see eliminates the armor penetration portion of builds altogether, especially in games without a tank, which is pretty common since a lot of top laners and junglers prefer playing carries or bruisers. This build allows you to hit 100% crit chance and also have some more movement speed. Instead of a Last Whisper item, you're going to wrap up the build with a Zeal item. It's pretty straightforward what the strengths and weaknesses of this build are, so you'll want to think carefully about whether or not you really want to sacrifice armor penetration based on what the enemy team is building. For runes, run Lethal Tempo, Presence of Mind, Legend Bloodline, Coup de Grace, Nimbus Cloak, and Gathering Storm. For items, you'll build Infinity Edge, Berserker's Greaves, Rapid Fire Cannon, Storm Razor, Bloodthirster, and a Zeal. We say Zeal, but it could be any item it builds into, really. It's just that games don't typically go long enough for players to ever finish that last item. Finally, we'll talk about a bot lane duo that's gaining popularity in Korea. While we don't think the SONA Lux combo originated in Korea, it's undeniable that it's gained a ton of notoriety in the region, and lots of people are playing it. This bot lane duo provides an incredible amount of utility to their team. Together, they're the whole package of heals, shielding, crowd control, and even damage. As long as there are carries elsewhere on the team, this duo is able to set their team up for success, and also bring some suffering upon their enemies. They provide so much effective health and value that teamfights are often an uphill battle against them. For SONA's build, you're going to run Summon Airy, Mana Flow Band, Transcendence, Gathering Storm, Magical Footwear, and Cosmic Insight, while purchasing Shard of True Ice, Seraph's Embrace, Lichbane, Ionian Boots of Lucidity, Ardent Censer, and Medjai's Soul Stealer. For Lux, you want to run Guardian, Shield Bash, Conditioning, Revitalize, Magical Footwear, and Cosmic Insight, and build Shard of True Ice, Athene's Unholy Grail, Ionian Boots of Lucidity, Ardent Censer, Redemption, and Medjai's Soul Stealer. That covers all of our bottom lane builds, so make sure to take one last look at the screen for a recap of each one of them. Finally, let's conclude with a support build. The final build that we're going to cover is Unsealed Spellbook Thresh. While this build isn't extremely popular yet, there's a lot of potential for it. Supports can make pretty good use of nearly any summoner spell. Cleanse can get them out of sticky situations, or instead allow them to tank crowd control effects for an ally and still manage to survive. Other summoner spells like Teleport or Ghost provide an immense amount of utility, and it's pretty obvious that Exhaust or Heal can always come in handy. Another strength of this build is that it allows Thresh players to access Hextech Flash Traption alongside Nimbus Cloak for the burst of movement speed following a Hex Flash. This allows Thresh to heavily pressure his opponents from brushes, Hex Flashing onto them, chasing them down with the movement speed bonus, and setting up easy flays. While you do give up some tankiness for not taking Aftershock, you gain a lot of utility and can always switch to Barrier or Summoner Heal if you need some extra tankiness. For runes, run Unsealed Spellbook, Hextech Flash Traption, Biscuit Delivery, Cosmic Insight, Nimbus Cloak, and Transcendence. For items, you'll build Pauldrons of White Rock, Ionian Boots of Lucidity, Zeke's Convergence, Knight's Vow, Gargoyle Stoneplate, and Locket of the Iron Solari. That's our final build, so check out the screen one last time for a recap of it. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. That concludes this episode of our Korean builds. I hope you guys found this type of content helpful, and let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And we hope to see you all in our next videos. Make sure to check out ProGuides.com though, because we have a ton of content there for you guys. Until next time, best of luck out on Summoner's Rift.